Welcome to Tullahoma Unitarian Universalist, those here in person, those on Zoom, and those on live streaming. With our opening reading, I will read, we have a calling in this world. We are called to honor diversity, to respect differences with dignity, and to challenge those who would forbid it. We are people of a wide path. Let us be wide in affection and go our way in peace. Carrie, would you light the chalice? Tom? I feel like I'm missing a step here because I have to go to announcements next. Okay. All right, do we have any announcements? Go ahead, Jancy.
Wash your own cup, please. Well, it just, if you do your own cup and you had coffee, then it just doesn't put it on somebody else to wash it for you. So, one less thing for others to do. So please wash your own cup if you had coffee. Thank you very much.
Jim?
I've got several announcements. We do have a board meeting scheduled for next Sunday. It'll be after service. We also have our annual meeting coming up on the first Sunday in May. So those things are coming up. We have 2 board vacancies starting July 1st. The vice president for programs, which Carrie has been doing for a couple of years, that position is open, and Debbie Heddish has stepped up, said she'll do it if nobody else will. So I think it's covered, but if somebody really wants that, they could probably have it. And then also the continuing trustee position will be open. So if you'd like to help serve your congregation and be on the board, let any of the board members know if you're interested in those positions. And then finally, the COVID numbers, they're going down still, which is great. A week ago, it was about 16. Well, actually, 2 weeks ago, the numbers we get are a week old. So 2 weeks ago, it was 16 cases. It was 13, the most recent data we have. So it had really been dropping, about halving each week, cut in half. It still dropped, but not nearly that much. So, but it's still headed in the right direction. So that's it for me.
Any other announcements online or in person?
Well, I'll chime in on the Thursday night deal. We may be shifting focus a little bit on what we're doing and looking at a series of videos provided by a think tank which regards rethinking humanity. I don't know for sure how we're going to handle that yet, but we are extending an invitation to everyone to join us on Thursday nights at 7. We go normally at about 9, and see what's going on and add to the confusion. Y'all come.
I could add to that. We did the first one last week. It was Rick kind of got us going in that direction. I think it's a really very timely topic, and what he was addressing was this is my takeaway, but he was addressing things like the disruptors in the financial world, if you wish, transportation, energy, food stuffs, commodities, stuff like that, and what's that's going to mean. And he says we're on the edge of a revolution, if you wish, from extraction to creation. Okay, which is, those are big words in some ways, but it does make sense. So come join us and find out. I remember about 30 years ago, maybe 35 years ago, we did one on, it was called Future Shock. It was by Toffler, and I believe he was, and then there's followed by Nesbitt, and anyway, they were looking at future trends. And that one back then was predicting the effect of the internet, and they all came true. They all came true. So you can look to the future and see what's going to happen, and I think this is going to be one of those. So come join us, and there you go.
Do you want to announce about the poets?
That way.
The poets.
That's Carrie mentioned one thing. There's been a little bit of a resurgence in the Not Yet Dead Poets, and we're looking at it, and we're going to see how we're going to do it. Like to do it here, and maybe if we can, there's a little technology in there. There's people that like to be on Zoom with that. Some of the former members, Barb is one, and so we might want to do that. So we got to look into that, but it's got to go through the board and all that sort of stuff first. So but we're thinking about it for sure. So.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Carrie, you have one?
Yeah. Next Sunday's speaker is Michelle Peterson, who's coming from Nashville. She's been with us on Zoom before, but she'll be in person. So if you've been dying to meet her, come next Sunday.
What's your topic?
I'm not sure.
Don't know the topic, but it'll be great. All right, then I will read one last announcement. We do not pass an offering plate, but we do need your support. If you'd like to donate to the work of the church, there's a donation plate in the back of the room, or you can send your checks to our treasurer at UU Tullahoma, P.O. Box 331, Tullahoma, Tennessee 37388. And with that, I will go to our non-responsive responsive. Oh, I'm sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
One more announcement, and with the financial thing, you prompted me to, I'm speaking for Karen, so she is handling our pledge drive right now. And if you have not filled out a pledge form, please do so. She's been using the date of the 18th, which is, I guess, Friday coming up this week, to please get your pledge forms into her so she can finalize the budget. So this is a word for Carrie. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so our reading out of the hymnal will be from number 471. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie and John.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Gosh, I can't even read my own writing this morning. I want to start off with a little audience participation, and we can do this via video also. These are abbreviations, and I want you to tell me, just shout it out, don't raise your hand, don't have to. What's CIA? What does that stand for?
Central Intelligence.
Oh, they can't hear you out there. One more time. Central Intelligence Agency. Oh, that's CIA. Let's go to the next one. FBI.
Federal
Investigation.
Scuba.
Self-contained underwater breathing apparatus.
Okay, the guys will get that, yeah. How about radar?
Radio ranging and detection. Let's see. Radio detection and ranging.
Okay, radio detection and ranging. NASA?
National Aerospace.
That should be quiet, Tom.
Go, Tom, go.
National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
Meg, shout it out again.
National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
Okay, and of course, here's one that's been in the news a lot, NATO.
North Atlantic
Atlantic
Treaty
Treaty
Organization.
Organization.
Okay, and how about this one? Crisprrrrr.
Not a clue.
Okay, well, I'll read it for you because I can't remember. I tried to remember this, but I could not. It's clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats. I know some of you didn't catch that at first. It's clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats. So that's what we're going to be talking about this morning. I will say this, that one of the things that CRISPR has done immediately was that one of the national fried chicken places had to cancel their "Our Chicken is CRISPR" campaign because it doesn't apply. Anyhow, we all know that our daily conversations are full of familiar abbreviations and acronyms, and some of them are familiar, some of them are not, and we get new ones every day, and the recent one is CRISPR, and we're going to talk about that this morning. CRISPR technology has the potential to be important to us as electricity and atomic energy even. It also has the potential to be even more harmful than those things. And in case you aren't familiar with CRISPR, it's a remarkable way to alter the genetics and makeup of any living thing, that's animal or vegetable. And while it's a new method of modifying genes, you hear a lot of people against GMOs, genetically modified organization. Well, guess what? Corn is genetically modified. It has been for the last 5,000 years, coming from a little weed with a few grains on it to what we eat now. Now, I am lost in my script here, so bear with me. And while it's a new method of modifying genes, we've been relying on it for thousands of years for animals and for vegetable or food that we eat. Early farmers didn't know about genes, but they certainly knew about how to modify the advantages of their cattle and their food, and that, as I said, has been going on for thousands of years. I want to raise this thing up a little closer, get new glasses. So the farmers of long ago could selectively breed their animals, which had more favorable traits, and growing grains, which were larger and produced more abundant and healthy crops. Although the results were beneficial, the process of modification could take years, even in some cases it could take decades to breed the desired food crop or the domesticated animals. The CRISPR method of gene modification is the result of a lucky discovery that E. coli bacteria, this was a discovery in 1987, have an unusual string of repeating DNA sequences in the bacteria. Therefore, that's the R in CRISPR, the repeating part. The string of DNA it repeats in some cases in bacteria. The Japanese found an unusual string of the repeating DNA sequences, but due to the lack of sufficient data, the function of those arrays could not be discovered. Other scientists soon identified other types of the unusual repeating sequences in bacteria other than just the E. coli. Initially, CRISPRs were thought to be a way that cells repaired their DNA. If there's some problem with DNA, that they could repair it. But in the early 2000s, it was soon discovered that the bacteria, the mysterious sequences, were immune. The bacteria containing those mysterious sequences were immune to attack by viruses. So it was, in fact, a sort of basic immune system by the bacteria. And now I also have to add Cas9. So Cass, you've got something named after you, I suppose. It's Cas9. That's That's an RNA thing that it's part of the whole CRISPR gene cutting replication process. It's called Cas9. And I would like to just toss this in that how many of you remember the first time you used a word processing program? And it was like, oh man, this is a lot easier than having to retype my papers. I can just back it up, bingo. Well, CRISPR's sort of a word processing program for DNA. If you don't have what you want in your string of DNA, just go to the CRISPR program and replace the genetic code, and bang, you can have a 6-headed dog if you want to. I don't think that's a very good idea, and I doubt Carrie will talk about this later, that some of the things you can do with CRISPR need a little consideration before you start doing them, because we may wind up like rabbits in Australia and other mistakes that human beings have made over the centuries by introducing different species into a new environment, and they go wild. Some of the things we haven't done, jellyfish are kind of going wild in the Pacific and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's a very it needs very close attention, and again, as I say, Carrie will take up that part of the program. Now, I am going to shut up and sit down and show you a little video from Scientific American. I think probably the video will explain to you better how the CRISPR program works, because it's a little cartoon. And if you're a visual learner, you'll learn more than you have by my talking here this morning. And after the CRISPR video is over, Carrie will be here talking and do a better job than I'm doing, I hope. So, okay, you ready, Katie?
I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'm trying to find it here.
CRISPR is the basis of a revolutionary gene editing system. One day, it could make it possible to do everything from resurrect extinct species to develop cures for chronic disease. It's built on a natural adaptation found in the DNA of bacteria and single-celled organisms. CRISPR stands for clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats. They're really just bits of genetic code with a specific, recognizable format. They contain a sequence that shows up over and over again, though it's often reversed each time. That's what makes it palindromic. Palindromes are words that can be read the same backwards and forwards. Palindromes are common in DNA. Some serve as backups for damage to our genetic code, while others are common in cancer mutations. With CRISPR, a group of enzymes recognize certain repeats and break the DNA there to insert important information in the middle. These insertions are called spacers, and they contain the genetic code of different viruses that have invaded in the past. Such previous invasions served a very important evolutionary purpose, immunizing against foreign threats. Researchers first discovered CRISPR in E. coli in the 1980s. When E. coli survives viral attacks, it incorporates some of the virus DNA into its own genetic code. E. coli isn't unique in this strategy. Between the 1980s and 2000, scientists found that lots of bacteria and single-celled organisms incorporate viral DNA this way. Cells use these sequences as templates for transcribing complementary strands of RNA. When viruses matching the template sequence enter the cell, the complementary RNA binds to them and directs a series of CRISPR-associated enzymes, or Cas enzymes, to attack, cutting invader DNA at the binding site. That neutralizes the viral threat. The CRISPR-Cas system is incredibly effective. It's also easy to manipulate, letting us alter a cell's genetic code however we want. In 2012, French microbiologist Emmanuel Charpentier and American biochemist Jennifer Doudna discovered that Cas enzymes, specifically Cas9, can be reprogrammed to cut nearly any part of the genome using RNA sequences made in the lab. Those guide RNA molecules tell Cas9 where to cut DNA in a cell. For their discovery, Charpentier and Doudna won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2020, and the use of CRISPR has taken off in science since their breakthrough. But scientists are still far from realizing CRISPR's potential. Cas9 is great at suppressing or knocking out unwanted genes, but for most medical purposes, it's not enough to cut unwanted DNA out. Scientists need to control how the DNA repairs itself. Left to their own devices, cells tend to repair broken DNA using a method that introduces lots of random errors. Researchers can provide cells with templates to guide the repair process, but they're still working on making that more reliable. Researchers have found lots of applications for CRISPR in animals, like making disease-resistant chicken and pigs, and mosquitoes that can't bite or lay eggs. But they've got many projects underway, making disease-resistant crops, for example, including wine grapes. Even more ambitiously, they're working to genetically alter pigs so their organs could be transplanted into humans, and bring extinct species, like the passenger pigeon, back to life by tweaking the genomes of similar birds alive today. When it comes to the human genome, though, scientists have been more hesitant. Editing our own DNA could easily end up causing more problems than it solves. While Cas9 reliably cuts DNA where we want it to, recent experiments have shown that it can also affect genes far off target. And even if we could get it to work reliably, many experts have flagged ethical concerns about using the technology for eugenics and designer babies. If parents can one day pay scientists to edit their baby's DNA, making them stronger or smarter, CRISPR could make the world even more unequal and prejudiced. In 2018, Chinese researcher He Jiankui claimed he'd used CRISPR to make HIV-resistant children. Whether or not he succeeded, his work violated China's National Health Commission rules, and he was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Using CRISPR on babies is widely illegal, but there are some cases where using CRISPR on humans may be worth the risk. In 2020, American researchers began the first clinical trials injecting CRISPR directly into humans, aiming to repair a genetic mutation that causes blindness. Many researchers hope CRISPR-based therapies could eventually cure hereditary diseases. They've already seen promising results in various animal studies. Though given the risks of editing the human genome, we're still a ways off from widespread use of CRISPR in medicine. CRISPR has given science a tool to reliably tinker with the code of life. But the question remains, can we do so safely and ethically while avoiding the unintended consequences of such power?
And breathe out of bed, down, breathe down.
Talk about repeating. Thank you, John and Katie, very much, Katie. Appreciate everything that you do. The book that John read that got him excited about CRISPR was The Codebreaker by Walter Isaacson. And Jennifer Doudna, thank you. And Samuel Steinberg wrote a book called A Crack in Creation, Gene Editing and the Unthinkable Power to Control Evolution. One of the statements that I read about it is that not since the atomic bomb has a technology so alarmed its inventors that they warned the world about its use. And Jennifer Doudna is very outspoken about warning people about what she discovered and what it could do to us. I've found a lot of information about what is going to be possible in the future with CRISPR. Of course, some of it good and some of it not so good. They mentioned the pet breeding, and that's really interesting. If you have a purebred animal, a lot of times they, over the centuries or the years, they have developed problems. I know that German Shepherds, sometimes the back quarters of their body, their spine, and their hips begin to have trouble as they age. And there are a lot of purebred animals that have that problem. I met a woman once in, actually she had come to a bed and breakfast that we were at Fall Creek Falls, and she was from Austria, and she raised Austrian shepherds. And she had come to the United States to get some to take back so that her line would continue more powerful and not to develop some of those problems. But that's one of the things that CRISPR can be used in, is editing out those problems that happen in purebred animals. They're also looking at making some smaller and some larger. Maybe one of these days, miniature pigs will actually be miniatures. My daughter bought one, and it stands this tall and is huge. It wasn't miniature. It's smaller than some, but anyway. And to change the colors, you know, darker dogs are not as wanted as white or lighter colored dogs. So that's another thing that's being used. And also they mentioned breeding pigs so that their organs, especially the heart, can be used in humans. And I don't know if anybody heard, but this week the first person who got a pig heart that had been edited died. And that's not unexpected because he was not healthy enough to receive a human heart. So it's not unexpected that he would not have lived for long. Another thing that I'm kind of excited about is the allergy-free foods. Scientists are working on removing genes that cause allergy in milk and eggs and nuts. One of the scientists said there are 4 proteins within egg white that cause allergy. Tim Doran, researcher at Australia's Cicero, and I didn't get the quote, I didn't get what that meant. We're essentially rewriting these regions of the gene that are recognized by the immune system and cause allergic reactions. His own daughter is allergic to eggs. Show me a kid that doesn't want to have a birthday cake on their birthday. That'd be the goal, a nice big birthday cake that she could have that tastes pretty good. Another thing, and this has been worked on, as John mentioned, for centuries, is pest-resistant plants, changing plants so that we don't have to use insecticides and pesticides, which that would be wonderful. And one that I thought was pretty good was decaffeinated coffee beans. The process to
Never mind.
the process to decaffeinate coffee is costly and aggressive, and beans are soaked and then steamed to remove the caffeine. If you grow the beans without the caffeine, or with a lower amount of caffeine to begin with, then you can achieve an end product that is a lot closer in taste to normal coffee. And you can maintain a larger content of the very healthy compounds that are naturally found in coffee. My aunt only drinks decaffeinated coffee, so, and instant at that, anyway. Greener fuels. This was something that I was kind of excited about. Algae has been proven to be useful as fuel, but it isn't economically viable because it takes so much. But they are editing it so that there can be twice as much fat produced, which would make it much more viable fuel. Drug research. The vaccines for COVID, well, I'm going to mention that later on, never mind. There are specific common illnesses and diseases that can take hold later in life and end up killing people earlier than necessary. Genetic editing can reverse most of those fundamental reasons that a body declines naturally on a cellular level. It can both improve and expand the quality of life in the later years. Another exciting one was spicy tomatoes. Chili peppers are difficult to grow and demand specific conditions to produce a consistent level of heat. If it's too hot or too cold or too wet or too dry, the levels of heat in the pepper is not consistent and can't be depended upon. But with spicy tomatoes, we would already have the capsaicin in them, and that I think is exciting. I'm ready for that. the capsaicin is what causes the heat level of spicy peppers. And tomatoes already have those genes. They just have to be manipulated a little bit to make them spicy. So that's exciting. And there have already been tomatoes grown that are like that. Eradicating pests. John and I saw a program the other night about mosquitoes in Africa. He read a book a few years ago that talked about how a mosquito is the most dangerous animal on the planet. It kills more people than any other animal. And the technology already exists to create that mosquito that could not bite or spread disease. And it's been proven that once these mosquitoes are released, that it will wipe out the population after 7 generations. And mosquitoes don't live that long. I don't know what a generation is, but I would say not more than a week. That was brought to the people in Africa. I can't remember what country, but the people chose not to have that mosquito released because they didn't know what else it would do. And I can understand that, but if it's going to kill itself out in 7 generations, I can't imagine what else it could do. I don't know, but anyway. And the Crisprrrrr could be used to wipe out rats that wreak havoc on islands with endangered species, rats that have come on ships and things like that were not naturally there. And it could limit the damage of feral cats in Australia. That's a really big problem in Australia, but mainly because cats kill so many birds. And I know this is one that everybody's excited about, is faster racehorses, right? They are already creating horses that are faster, stronger, and better jumpers. In 2013, the International Federation for Equestrian Sports lifted a ban preventing cloned horses from competing in international competitions. So they're already out there. That was 2013. So more nutritious fish. Genetically modified salmon grow twice as fast as wild salmon in Canada. They're already producing that fish. I believe these fish are also modified so that if they escape the facility, they can't breed. So what they're doing is modifying all the embryos as they come through, and then so they're not depending on what they have done in the past, because they don't want them to be able to breed out in the wild. They're making the fish more nutritious and tasty, and increasing the levels of omega-3, which is a really important thing in our diet. And I really love de-extinction. Has anybody ever heard that word? To be extincted or something anyway. The first candidate is the passenger pigeon. These were killed out during World War I because they were used to send messages, and where eventually all of them were killed out. CRISPR technology is introducing genes from the passenger pigeon into its modern day relative, the bandtail pigeon. They will be continually bred until the DNA matches that of the extinct species, which is interesting. And we could soon have woolly mammoths, because there's a group at Harvard working on that very thing. I'm dying to see a woolly mammoth. The diseases that are being attacked by CRISPR are cancer. They can take the cancer that you have in your body and mutate it or read it, and then create a medicine that will attack what is causing the cancer in your body. And that's really exciting. Blood disorders, sickle cell disease. A woman in Nashville was actually cured of sickle cell disease by CRISPR. So that's really exciting, especially for people who have that very painful disease. Hemophilia and beta thalassemia, which I have no idea what it is, but it causes anemia, bone deformity, and slow growth, and heart problems. Many hereditary forms of blindness can be fixed. AIDS, there are scientists working on AIDS now that they can do the CRISPR treatment to people with AIDS, and they will be cured. Cystic fibrosis, that's a disease that is just so horrible, and children suffer from it so much. And if they live, then as an adult they suffer so much. Diabetes, muscular dystrophy, Huntington's disease. And as I mentioned earlier, COVID, Pfizer and Moderna both use a CRISPR technique to create their vaccines. And a lot of us, that's what we took. The ethics to be considered in CRISPR are very scary if they're not used. The biggest danger is they may not be implemented equitably, meaning that the wealthy could receive it and the non-wealthy not, which would increase the disparity between their access to health services. Where could it lead if left alone? If we don't govern it, and there's a lot of discussion about how it's going to be governed, the World Health Organization wants to have that right, which I think they should. But there are all kinds of patents, other things like that. But as was mentioned in the end of that video about, hey, let's see what his name is. Hey, Janku, he was really a bad boy. He really, really did a bad one thing, but I'll explain a little bit more. The great benefits to the environment, but what would that do down the road? When they mutate a gene, when they change a gene, we don't know what the result of that will be after it's used over and over again, as you know, people have other children. And the woman who has a sickle cell anemia cure, if she had children whose father did not have sickle cell, then her children would not have it. So that's really great, I think. But we don't know what else is going to happen with that. I believe she's past childbearing years. So I don't think that's really a problem. And it's not possible to get true informed consent because you're working on embryos, so they can't consent to what's being done to them. Since it's expensive and relatively easy to use, inexpensive and relatively easy to use, it's prone to misuse, such as creating biological weapons. For this reason, American authorities have named CRISPR a potential weapon of mass destruction. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Chinese scientists who produced the altered babies. In court, it was found that he forged ethical documents and misled doctors into unknowingly implanting the genetically edited embryos into two women. One woman was having twins, and the other did not, had a single baby. He edited them so they wouldn't be able to get HIV. The father of one of them had HIV, and they wanted to make sure that babies didn't get it. But part of the problem is that they didn't know. The babies didn't have it at the time. Of course, they were embryos. So there wasn't a problem to be considered or to be fixed. And that was part of the problem. He didn't, and the actual editing wasn't done very well. One of the children received the exact what they should have to keep them from getting HIV. The other one only received part of it. So they don't know what's going to happen there. And the third baby they don't know yet because it hasn't been born, or it hadn't at the time. I'm sure it has now, because this was a couple years ago. And of course, it's not clear what those mutations will do in other places, in other parts of the DNA. there were, like I said, problems with informed consent because baby embryos can't consent to being manipulated. He operated under a cloak of secrecy. Even the doctors didn't know that they were implanting genetically modified embryos. A few people knew that he was doing it, but they failed to stop him. He acted against global consensus because it's already been determined that this should not be done. We should not be editing embryos, human embryos, until we know what's going to be happening. He acted against his own ethical views. A year before, he had given a talk about how we shouldn't be doing this. He sought out ethical advice and he ignored it. There's no way to tell if the work he did is going to be any good or not, if it's going to, help anything. And a leading geneticist came to his defense. He said that the only thing was that the guy messed up his paperwork. He didn't do good paperwork. So that was what he had to say. And of course, this could happen again. I found a website that talked about the future of CRISPR. I mentioned earlier that in cancer that they can use the cancer you have in your body to genetically modify it so it kills out itself. This is by the 2030s. We will have hyper-individualized medicine. That means medicine that is created just for you. Gene editing in food will make it more nutritious, flavorful, and commercially viable. Most people don't know that cashews come from a fruit. I had a friend from Nicaragua one time, and he told me the cashew they considered trash, that they ate the fruit it grew on. It grows out the bottom of a thing like a peach. It's the seed, but it's outside. So we might be able to eat the real fruit if it's modified so that it can be shipped, because at this point it can't be. And there would be a thing they're calling blockchain. I don't really know exactly where they came up with that name, but it'll enable us to store, share, and protect our genetic information so it won't be out there for the world to use. And one of the things that really excited me was printing out 3D neighborhoods. They're already printing out houses. I think that's so exciting. But they'll be able to print out neighborhoods that will provide safe shelter for some of the world's poorest people, especially people who were hit by Katrina. They could have used some safe shelter immediately after that. So there's some exciting things that CRISPR can do, and I think that'll be wonderful. There's some scary things that it can do. It can create biological warfare, and that's really scary, especially considering what's going on today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John and Carrie. I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting talkback. Looking forward to it. Okay. As we close out, I will read our traditional 414. As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return. Thank you for being here. I hope you come back for Talkback. It is now 5 after 11. Let's come back at 11:15. Looking forward to seeing everybody here. Just enjoy it, and remember, love is